Welcome, traveler. Let the world outside your door begin to fade away as we prepare for a long and gentle journey. Tonight, we are leaving the modern world behind, stepping back across the centuries into a time of silk and starlight. We are in the ancient city of Chang'an, the great capital at the start of the Silk Road. It is the hour before the dawn, and the air is cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. There is no rush tonight. The road ahead is vast, and we will move through it slowly, one quiet step at a time. Let your breath settle into a steady rhythm as we wait for the great gates of the east to open. A single lantern flickers at a nearby stall where a man is stirring a large iron pot of steaming congee. The white vapor rises into the dark air like a slow-moving ghost, curling around the eaves of a nearby tea house. He moves with the quiet, practiced rhythm of someone who has seen 1,000 dawns, just like this one. His wooden ladle clicking softly against the rim of the pot. Nearby, a stone basin catches a steady drip of water from a bamboo pipe, each drop making a soft, metallic sound that echoes against the courtyard walls. The city is suspended in a soft, gray silence, waiting for the sun to break over the high horizon. In the shadows of a nearby stable, the sounds of preparation begin to stir. You can hear the low, rhythmic grunts of camels as they are led out into the open air, their heavy hooves making muffled thuds on the packed dirt. A merchant is carefully checking the hemp ropes on a wooden pack saddle, his fingers moving surely in the dim light. He pulls a cord tight, and the sound of dry fiber rubbing against the timber is sharp and clear in the stillness. He runs a calloused hand over a bundle of silk wrapped in heavy oilcloth, feeling the smooth, cool weight of the treasure that will soon travel thousands of miles. The morning light begins to shift from a deep charcoal to a soft, pale violet. High above, the swallows are starting to wake, their small wings making tiny brushing sounds as they leave their nests beneath the tiled eaves of the great mosque. A gentle breeze carries the scent of roasted pine nuts and the faint, bitter aroma of medicinal herbs from a shop that has not yet opened its shutters. The merchant's assistant brings him a small copper bowl of hot tea. The rising steam warms the man's face as he takes a slow, careful sip, looking toward the massive wooden doors of the city's western gate. These gates are immense, reinforced with heavy iron studs that catch the very first glint of the approaching sun. Two guards stand in the deep shadows of the archway, their bronze breastplates looking dull and cold in the early mist. One of them yawns, a long and quiet sound, and adjusts the long spear resting against his shoulder before settling back into a motionless watch. The wood of the gate is old and thick, timber harvested from ancient forests far to the south, smelling faintly of resin and age. We wait here, feeling the immense weight of the capital behind us and the quiet mystery of the world ahead. Suddenly, there is the deep wooden groan of the gate being unbarred and opened. It is a slow, heavy sound that vibrates in the stone beneath our feet and in the air itself. The massive doors swing inward with a rhythmic creak, revealing the long road that leads toward the distant horizon. The dust on the ground is kicked up by the movement, dancing in a single, sharp shaft of light that has finally broken over the eastern wall. The merchant leads his lead camel forward, and the bell around the animal's neck gives a single, deep chime. It is a clear, lonely sound marking the beginning. We pass under the archway, where the shadow is deep and the air is noticeably cooler. The ceiling of the gatehouse is high and lost in the darkness, but you can feel the immense pressure of the stone blocks piled high above. An official sits at a small wooden desk just inside the tunnel, his face illuminated by a single tallow candle. He holds a carved jade seal and presses it into a tray of thick, red cinnabar paste. With a firm, quiet motion, he stamps a travel permit. The sound of the seal hitting the paper is a soft thump, a final, official permission to depart into the unknown. Beyond the gate, the road stretches out straight and wide between long rows of ancient willow trees. Their slender, hanging branches are brushed with a fine coating of silver dew, swaying almost imperceptibly in the morning air. The camel's wide feet sink slightly into the soft, damp earth of the roadside as the caravan finds its pace. To the left, a farmer is leading a heavy ox toward a nearby field, the wooden yoke creaking with every slow step the animal takes. The farmer raises a hand in a silent, distant greeting, his face partially shadowed by a wide, woven straw hat. As the caravan moves further away, the great gray walls of Chang'an begin to shrink against the sky. The bricks look like the scales of a sleeping dragon resting under the brightening sun. The familiar sounds of the city, the distant clatter of market carts and the chime of temple bells, begin to fade, replaced by the gentle hum of the open country. A small wooden bridge crosses a narrow, stone-lined canal where the water is dark and still. A single white lotus flower floats near the muddy bank, its petals perfectly motionless. We cross the bridge slowly, the planks thumping softly under the weight of the camels. The tiled roofs of the outer suburbs are gradually replaced by small mud brick houses with thick thatched roofs. A young child stands in a doorway, holding a wooden bowl and watching the long line of camels pass with wide, curious eyes. A dog lies in the dust of a courtyard, its tail wagging slowly just once before it settles back into a nap. The merchant reaches into a small leather pouch at his belt and touches a jade amulet kept there for luck. It is smooth and warm from the heat of his skin, a small piece of home he will carry through the dust of the world. The sun is higher now, turning the fine dust kicked up by the caravan into a shimmering golden haze. The line of camels stretches out behind us, a long, swaying ribbon of brown and tan against the vibrant green of the river valley. The bells are no longer lonely. They have found a collective rhythm, a steady, melodic clink-clink that keeps time with the slow, deliberate pace of our walk. The shadows cast by the willow trees grow shorter on the road as the morning progresses. We are moving toward the edge of the known world, where the green hills will eventually turn to bone-dry stone. The morning warmth begins to seep into the heavy wool of the travelers' cloaks, a comforting weight against the skin. Far ahead, the horizon appears flat and hazy, where the pale sky meets the earth in a blur of soft blue and gold. We leave the very last of the cultivated fields behind, entering a space where the wind has more room to breathe across the tall grass. The sound of running water in the irrigation canals is gone now, replaced by the dry, rhythmic rustle of stalks against the camel's legs. We move forward, following the swaying back of the lead camel into the brightening light. The singing sands of the Gobi. The lush greens of the Wei River Valley have long since faded into a memory of emerald and water. Now, the world has become a palette of ochre, gold, and a sky so vast it seems to press down with the weight of its own silence. The transition from the world of people to the world of silence is slow and subtle, marked by the gradual disappearance of the last hardy shrubs. Now, the caravan enters the heart of the dunes, where the earth itself seems to move and breathe under the heat of the sun. The singing sands of the Gobi, the lush greens of the Wei River Valley, have long since faded into a memory of emerald and water, replaced by a world where the earth itself seems to have turned to gold. As the caravan moves deeper into the Gobi, the horizon stretches out in every direction, a flat and shimmering line where the pale sky meets the sun-bleached ground. The air here is different. It is thin, dry, and carries the faint metallic scent of ancient dust and sun-baked stone. There are no trees to break the view, only the endless rise and fall of the dunes, appearing like frozen waves of a vast, silent ocean that has forgotten the taste of rain. The led camel, a heavy and shaggy Bactrian with 2 sturdy humps, moves with a slow and deliberate grace. Its wide, padded feet sink into the soft crest of a dune, making a gentle, muffled sound like a hand pressing into a feathered pillow. With every step, a small cascade of fine sand trickles down the slope, flowing like liquid silk until it settles in the shadow below. The animal's rhythmic swaying is hypnotic, a steady back-and-forth motion that has remained unchanged for thousands of years. Around its thick neck, a heavy brass bell swings slowly, emitting a deep, resonant chime that hangs in the still air long after the step is taken. A young merchant, his face wrapped in a long scarf of indigo linen, squinted against the brilliant glare of the midday sun. His eyes, rimmed with the fine, white dust of the road, followed the slow movement of a desert beetle as it struggled across a ridge of sand. He could feel the dry heat radiating from the ground, a warmth that soaked through his leather boots and into the very marrow of his bones. He reached up to adjust the heavy strap of his pack, feeling the rough texture of the hemp rope against his sun-darkened skin. Every movement he made was slow and measured, a quiet economy of motion designed to preserve his strength for the long miles ahead. As the wind begins to pick up, a low and haunting hum starts to vibrate through the dunes, a sound known to travelers as the singing sands. It is a deep, ghostly drone that seems to come from the earth itself, as if the desert were whispering old secrets in a language made of friction and air. The sound rises and falls with the gusts, sometimes sounding like a distant choir, and other times like the low moan of a great wooden ship at sea. The camels do not flinch. They have heard this music before, and they continue their steady march, their ears flicking occasionally to shake off the fine grit carried by the breeze. The light at mid-afternoon becomes a thick, heavy gold that catches every ripple and crest in the landscape. On the side of a steep dune, the merchant notices the delicate, rib-like patterns carved into the sand by the wind, looking like the fingerprints of some giant invisible spirit. The sand here is not just one color. It shifts from a pale cream to a deep, burnt orange where the shadows begin to pool. He reaches down and picks up a small, smooth pebble, its surface polished to a soft sheen by centuries of blowing grit. It feels cool in the center of his palm, a tiny, solid piece of reality in a world that feels increasingly like a dream. Water has become the most precious treasure in the caravan, more valuable than the silk or the spices hidden in the packs. The merchant listens to the soft, rhythmic sloshing of liquid inside the heavy leather gourds tied to the side of his mount. The sound is a comfort, a liquid promise of survival in this bone-dry wilderness. When it is time to drink, he takes only a small, careful sip, letting the lukewarm water rest on his tongue for a moment before swallowing. He can taste the faint, earthy flavor of the leather and the salt of his own skin, a reminder of the delicate balance between the traveler and the road. Far off in the distance, a shimmering haze rises from the ground, creating the illusion of a vast blue lake bordered by tall, leafy trees. The merchant knows this is a mirage, a trick of the light and the heat, yet he finds himself staring at it with a quiet, longing curiosity. He watches as the blue water seems to ripple and dance, only to dissolve back into the pale yellow of the horizon as the caravan moves forward. The desert is a place of illusions, where the line between what is real and what is imagined becomes as thin as a single thread of silk blowing in the wind. The sun begins its slow descent, and the shadows of the camels stretch out across the sand like long, spindly giants. The intense heat of the day starts to lift, replaced by a sudden, sharp coolness that causes the travelers to pull their heavy wool cloaks tighter around their shoulders. The sky shifts from a brilliant, pale blue to a deep, bruised violet, and the first few stars begin to blink into existence. They are incredibly bright here, far from the haze of any city, looking like spilled diamonds resting on a bed of dark velvet. The silence of the evening is profound, broken only by the steady, rhythmic clink of the camel bells. They find a hollow between two high dunes to make their camp for the night, a natural bowl that offers a small amount of protection from the night wind. The men move in silence, unloading the heavy packs and arranging them in a circle to create a low wall. A small fire is built from dried scrub and camel dung, the flames flickering orange and red against the deepening dark. The smoke rises straight up in the still air, carrying a pungent, earthy aroma that smells of safety and rest. The merchant sits on a roll of carpet, his back leaning against a soft bale of raw wool, watching the embers glow. As the fire burns down to a soft, pulsing red, the merchant looks out at the dark silhouettes of the dunes against the starlight. The singing of the sands has faded to a faint, rhythmic whistle, like a tired breath. He runs his hand over the surface of a nearby pack, feeling the intricate weave of the heavy fabric and the solid weight of the goods inside. The desert night is vast and cold. But here, in the circle of the caravan, there is a small and fragile warmth. He closes his eyes, letting the immense silence of the Gobi wrap around him like a heavy, dark blanket. The rhythm of the day's journey remains in his body, a slow and steady pulse that matches the movement of the stars above. He knows that tomorrow the sun will rise again over the golden waves, and they will continue their trek toward the edges of the mountains. The road is long and the sands are many, but each step brings them closer to the hidden places where the desert meets the stone. In the quiet of the hollow, the merchant drifts into a shallow sleep, his dreams filled with the sound of bells and the shimmering light of the singing dunes. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the folds of the earth, the first outposts of the mountains wait in the dark. The caravan will soon leave the open sands behind, seeking the shelter of the high cliffs and the ancient secrets carved into the rock. The journey moves ever westward, following the starlight toward a place where the silence is kept by stone instead of sand. The low hum of the desert follows them into the night, a gentle reminder of the vast world that remains to be crossed. Chapter 3. The Sanctuary of the Hidden Caves. The shifting waves of the Gobi finally give way to the firm, cracked earth of the Dunhuang oasis, where the air tastes of distant water. After the vast, empty yellow of the dunes, the sight of the Mingsha mountain cliffs feels like a jagged spine rising from the wasteland to greet the traveler. This is a place of transition, where the desert wind meets the shadow of the stone. We approach the high, sun-bleached cliffs just as the afternoon light turns a dusty violet, revealing hundreds of small wooden doors carved directly into the rock face. It is a hidden world of quiet waiting, a library of the soul carved into the edge of the world. The air near the cliff is filled with the soft, dry rustle of poplar leaves, their silver undersides flickering in the breeze like thousands of tiny coins. A narrow stream trickles nearby, its water clear and cold as it reflects the pale sky in a shimmering winding ribbon. We dismount, feeling the sudden stability of the hard ground beneath our boots after days of walking on the treacherous, yielding sand. High above, Narrow wooden walkways and rickety ladders cling to the side of the cliff, connecting one cave entrance to the next. The wind whistles through these timbers, creating a low, musical creak that sounds like an old instrument being tuned. Stepping inside one of the lower caves is like descending into a deep, cool well, leaving the sun's fire far behind. The intense heat of the desert vanishes in an instant, replaced by a stillness that feels heavy and ancient against the skin. Our footsteps are silent on the floor of packed earth, which has been smoothed to a dull sheen by the passage of thousands of pilgrims over the centuries. The light from the entrance reaches only a few feet into the darkness, revealing the rough, pitted texture of the gray limestone walls. There is a faint, lingering scent of sandalwood and old beeswax, a perfume that has soaked into the stone. The merchant strikes a spark and lights a small oil lamp, its flame a tiny, trembling point of orange light in the vast dark. As he holds it aloft, the darkness retreats, and the walls suddenly bloom with a riot of silent, sacred color. Hundreds of painted figures appear on the plaster, their faces calm and their eyes half closed in a state of eternal meditation. The pigments, rich blues made from ground lapis lazuli, deep reds from cinnabar and earthy ochres, look as fresh as if they were applied only yesterday. The lamplight flickers across a golden halo, making it shimmer and dance against the dark, cavernous background. We move the lamp closer to a painting of a flying apsara, a celestial being who seems to drift effortlessly through the stone. Her long, silken ribbons swirl around her body like colorful smoke, defying the gravity of the mountain that houses her. Her hands are delicately rendered, one finger pointing toward a painted lotus flower that appears to be floating in a pond of turquoise water. The artist has captured a moment of perfect silent grace, a snapshot of another world where the wind is always soft. The fine lines of her robes are painted with a brush as thin as a single hair, showing incredible patience. Near the corner of the mural, the plaster has chipped away slightly, revealing the humble layers hidden beneath the celestial beauty. We can see the mixture of river mud, chopped straw, and animal hair that the monks used to smooth the rough cave walls before they began to paint. It is a grounded foundation for such heavenly imagery, a reminder of the human hands that labored here in the absolute silence. The merchant reaches out, not quite touching the wall, but feeling the cool radiation of the rock against his palm. The cave feels like a living thing, breathing slowly in the dark, protecting these fragile colors. In a smaller side chamber, we find an old monk sitting on a low wooden stool, a pallet of stone bowls arranged around him. He is carefully reapplying a layer of gold leaf to the petal of a painted flower, his movements slow and deeply reverent. He uses a small bamboo tool to press the thin, fluttering metal onto the wall, his breath held steady to avoid blowing the gold away. The light from his single candle casts a long, swaying shadow against the ceiling, making it look as though the painted clouds above are moving. He does not look up as we pass, entirely absorbed in his work. From somewhere outside the cave, the distant chime of a bell echoes down the long cliffside, carried by a sudden gust of air. It is a small wind bell hanging from the corner of a wooden pagoda, caught by the desert wind and ringing with a high, crystalline clarity. The sound pierces the thick silence of the cave like a drop of water falling into a perfectly still mountain pond. Inside, the only other sound is the soft, rhythmic scrape of the monk's tool and the occasional crackle of the lamp wick. These small noises do not break the peace. They only serve to measure the vast, empty space. As the sun begins its final descent, A single beam of horizontal light finds its way through the narrow entrance of the cave. It illuminates a large, seated Buddha carved directly from the living rock, its face bathed in a sudden, intense glow. The statue's smile is faint and knowing, its heavy hands resting in a traditional gesture of peace and protection. Dust motes dance in the golden beam, swirling in slow, lazy circles like tiny stars caught in a shaft of light. For a few minutes, the entire cave is transformed into a hall of liquid gold before the sun slips lower and shadows reclaim the space. The merchant sets down his lamp on a stone ledge and takes out a small silk ribbon he has carried from the distant east. He ties it gently to a wooden peg near the cave entrance, a simple gesture of gratitude for the journey thus far. The ribbon is a pale sky blue color, and it flutters softly in the evening breeze that now blows into the chamber from the dunes. It looks bright and fragile against the gray, weathered stone, a small mark of a passing life in a place that measures time in centuries. He bows his head for a moment, listening to the desert wind. We step back out onto the wooden walkway as the moon begins to rise over the silvered dunes. The desert floor below is a sea of pale light, the shadows of the poplars looking like dark ink spilled on a white sheet. The heat of the day is entirely gone, replaced by a crisp, clean cold that makes our breath appear as faint white mist. The caves behind us are like dark eyes in the cliff face, each one guarding a world of color. There is a profound sense of safety here, a sanctuary tucked into the edge of the world, where the traveler can rest before the climb. The caravan will rest here for another day, allowing the camels to drink from the stream and the men to find peace. But the road is already calling again, leading further west toward the high, cold passes where the earth meets the sky. We look one last time at the small wooden doors of the caves, feeling the weight of the stories they hold in the dark. The silence of the mountain follows us as we return to our tents, our minds filled with flying beings and golden halos. Ahead, the path begins to climb, moving away from the sand and toward the ice. Chapter 4. The Ascent of the Pamir Mountains. The warmth of the Dunhuang oasis and the silent company of the painted Buddhas now fall behind as the caravan begins its long, slow tilt toward the heavens. We are leaving the lowlands for the high, cold spine of the world, where the earth is made of jagged granite and the wind carries the scent of ancient ice. The path begins as a gentle slope of gray shale crunching rhythmically under the heavy weight of the camel's padded feet. The soft golden light of the desert has been replaced by a sharp, thin clarity that makes every distant peak look as though it were carved from cold flint. We move in a long, winding line, the caravan looking like a small, dark thread being drawn through a needle of stone. A hawk circles high above in the pale blue void, its wings motionless as it rides the updrafts, watching our slow progress. The silence here is deeper than in the desert, broken only by the steady, clinking rhythm of the harness. As we climb higher, the air begins to thin, and every breath feels like a cool, sharp draft from a mountain spring. The merchant pulls his thick sheepskin cloak tighter around his chest, feeling the heavy, oily wool trap the warmth of his body against the increasing chill. He notices the way his own breath appears as a faint, swirling mist before him, a white ghost that vanishes almost as soon as it is born. The path narrows, clinging to the side of a massive, shadowed cliff where the rock is slick with a fine coating of frost. He keeps his eyes on the tail of the camel in front, trusting the animal's ancient instinct for the stone. Looking down, the valley floor is now hidden beneath a soft, rolling carpet of white clouds that look like a frozen sea. Occasionally, the mist parts for a moment, revealing a glimpse of a dark, rushing river far below, appearing as a silver vein in a body of gray rock. The sound of the water does not reach us here. We are in a realm of high silence, where the only music is the whistling of the wind through the crags. The sunlight is brilliant but carries no heat, reflecting off patches of old, hard snow that nestle in the crevices of the mountain. It is a world of blue and silver, beautiful and indifferent. At midday, the caravan pauses beside a small mountain spring that bubbles up from a crack in the dark slate. The water is so cold it makes the merchant's teeth ache, but it is sweet and clear, tasting of minerals and high altitudes. He watches as his lead camel dips its head, the animal's long eyelashes fringed with tiny, glittering ice crystals. The water ripples against the stone basin, splashing softly over the mossy edge and disappearing back into the rock. There is a small pile of stones nearby, a traveler's cairn, where the merchant places a small, flat pebble as a silent prayer for a safe crossing through the high passes. The incline becomes steeper now, and the camels must lunge forward with each step, their heavy muscles tensing under the thick fur of their legs. The sound of their rhythmic, heavy breathing fills the narrow space between the cliffs, a steady huff-huff that matches the slow pace of the climb. The merchant can feel the strain in his own thighs, the steady burn of effort that keeps him warm despite the biting wind. He reaches out to steady himself against a cold rock face, feeling the rough, crystalline texture of the granite beneath his numb fingers. Every inch of forward movement is earned through persistence and the quiet patience of the road. As the sun begins to dip behind the highest peaks, the entire world is bathed in a deep, sapphire blue. The shadows are long and sharp, stretching across the rocky path like dark fingers reaching for the edge of the cliffs. The sky above is a darkening indigo, and the first stars begin to emerge, looking larger and brighter than they ever did in the lowlands. They do not so much smoke as they glow with a steady, fierce light, seemingly close enough to touch if one were to climb just a little higher. The air grows even colder, turning the moisture on the travelers' scarves into stiff, white rime. We find a narrow, protected ledge to make our camp, a small shelf of stone tucked beneath a protruding overhang of rock. The space is cramped, forcing the camels to kneel close together, their warm bodies creating a small pocket of heat in the freezing night. There is no wood for a fire here, so the travelers huddle together, sharing a simple meal of dried meat and hard, flat bread. The merchant wraps his hands around a small wooden bowl of warm water, feeling the steam moisten his wind-chapped skin. The fire of the stars above is the only light, casting a silver sheen over the huddled forms of men and animals. The night wind howls through the high spires of the Pamirs, a lonely and mournful sound that seems to come from the very top of the world. It rattles the leather straps of the packs and whistles through the hollows of the rocks, yet inside the circle of the caravan, there is a fragile peace. The merchant lies down on a layer of thick felt, looking up at the wheeling stars through the opening of his hood. He feels the immense weight of the mountains all around him, a cathedral of stone that has stood since the beginning of time. His heart slows as the exhaustion of the climb finally pulls him towards sleep. In the darkness, the sounds of the mountain become more distinct, the occasional sharp crack of stone contracting in the cold, and the low, heavy sighs of the sleeping camels. The merchant dreams of the green valleys that lie on the other side of these peaks, of places where the air is thick and the water flows warm in the sun. He knows that the highest pass still lies ahead, a gateway of ice that must be navigated before they can descend. For now, he rests in the cradle of the stone, his breath a slow, steady rhythm that matches the pulse of the mountain itself. As the first light of dawn begins to gray the eastern peaks, the frost on the packs looks like a dusting of fine salt. The travelers wake in silence, their movements stiff and slow as they prepare for the final push over the summit. The merchant beats his gloved hands together to stir the circulation, watching the sky turn from a deep plum to a pale, luminous rose. The climb is not yet over, but the air carries a new scent, a faint, distant promise of earth and growth coming from the far western slopes. They begin the day's journey with a quiet resolve, moving upward into the thinning light. The descent will be long, leading us down from these icy heights toward the rich, warm plains of Transoxiana. But tonight we belong to the mountains, and the mountains belong to the stars, a cold and beautiful kingdom at the roof of the world. We take one last look at the frozen peaks behind us before beginning the slow, winding path toward the west. Chapter 5: The Bazaars of Samarkand. The biting frost of the high passes finally relents as the path winds down into the lush Zarafshan Valley, where the air is thick with the scent of blossoming orchards and damp earth. After the monochrome world of stone and ice, the first sight of Samarkand is a breathtaking shock of turquoise and azure, a city that looks like a fallen piece of the sky resting in a sea of green. The caravan moves slowly through the outer orchards, where the heavy branches of apricot and pomegranate trees lean over the mud brick walls. The air here is warm and still, vibrating with the low, steady hum of honeybees moving through the white blossoms. A gentle breeze carries the sweet, delicate perfume of ripening fruit and the earthy smell of river water flowing through narrow irrigation channels. The merchant feels the tension of the mountain climb melt from his shoulders, replaced by a soft, rhythmic peace. He reaches out to brush his fingers against a low-hanging leaf, feeling its cool, waxy surface beneath his skin. We approach the great city gates, where the dust of the road meets the polished stone of civilization. The transition is marked by a sudden increase in the symphony of life. The quiet clink of our camel bells is joined by the distant shouts of vendors and the clatter of wooden carts. The archway of the gate is immense, decorated with intricate geometric tiles that shimmer in the afternoon sun like a kaleidoscope of blue and gold. In the deep shadow of the tunnel, the air is cool and smells faintly of damp stone and old timber. We pass through slowly, our heartbeats matching the steady, heavy thud of the camel's hooves on the paving stones. Emerging from the gatehouse, we are immediately swept into the vibrant, swirling heart of the marketplace. The narrow streets are lined with small wooden stalls, each one overflowing with treasures that have traveled across continents. High above, colorful awnings made of heavy linen stretch from one roof to another, creating a soft, filtered light that glows with shades of amber and rose. The ground is a patchwork of light and shadow, where the fine dust of the city dances in the occasional shafts of brilliant sun. We move with the current of the crowd, our eyes drawn to the dazzling array of colors that seem to vibrate in the warm air. In the coppersmith's quarter, the air is filled with a rhythmic, metallic music that echoes off the clay walls. A young man sits cross-legged on a low wooden bench, a small hammer rising and falling in a steady, hypnotic beat. Each strike against the glowing metal produces a clear, ringing note and a tiny shower of orange sparks that die before they hit the ground. He is shaping a large, ornate water jug, his dark eyes focused entirely on the curve of the handle. The smell of hot metal and charcoal smoke is thick here, a sharp and industrious scent that speaks of craft and ancient tradition. We move deeper into the textile section, where the atmosphere shifts to one of soft, muffled elegance. Rolls of raw silk are stacked high on cedar shelves, their surfaces catching the light with a soft, liquid luster that looks like moving water. The merchant reaches out to touch a piece of heavy brocade, his fingers tracing the raised patterns of golden thread woven into the deep crimson fabric. It is cool and smooth to the touch, a tactile miracle born from a tiny cocoon and 1,000 hours of labor. The sound here is hushed, the voices of the silk sellers low and melodic, as if they are guarding a sacred secret. Nearby, the air becomes heavy and humid, carrying the pungent, earthy aroma of the dye vats. Large ceramic pots are filled with steaming liquids, vibrant indigos, rich matters, and the brilliant yellow of saffron. A dyer, his hands stained a deep, permanent blue, lifts a long skein of wool from a vat, the excess liquid dripping back into the pot with a soft, rhythmic splashing. The steam rises in thick white curls, carrying the scent of boiled roots and minerals into the rafters. The wet wool catches the light, its new color looking intense and alive against the weathered wood of the drying racks. As we round a corner, the scent of the city shifts again, becoming a warm and intoxicating cloud of spice. Sacks of woven hemp stand open along the narrow path, piled high with cinnamon sticks, dark cloves, and green cardamom pods. The merchant leans down to inhale the aroma of ground cumin, a dry and dusty scent that reminds him of the sun-baked earth of the far south. A vendor carefully measures out a small pile of black peppercorns using a set of delicate brass scales, the tiny weights clicking softly against the metal pans. It is an olfactory map of the world, written in the language of seeds and bark. The smell of baking bread draws us toward a small courtyard where a clay tandoor oven glows with a soft, orange fire. A baker stretches a circle of dough over a padded cushion and slaps it against the hot inner wall of the oven with a muffled thump. Moments later, he retrieves a golden loaf of Samarkand naan, its surface decorated with intricate stamped patterns and a dusting of black nigella seeds. The bread is steaming, its crust crisp, and its center soft as a cloud, filling the air with the comforting, yeasty scent of life. We take a piece, feeling its warmth seep through our fingers as the first bite melts away the hunger of the road. We find a moment of rest in a quiet chaikhana, a tea house built over a small bubbling spring. We sit on a low charpoy covered in thick woven carpets, our backs leaning against soft bolsters of embroidered cotton. A young boy brings a turquoise ceramic pot of green tea and small glass cups that catch the flickering light of a nearby oil lamp. The tea is hot and carries the faint floral scent of jasmine, warming us from the inside out as we watch the world pass by. The sound of the water beneath the floorboards is a constant, soothing gurgle, a liquid anchor in the busy heart of the city. In a nearby workshop, the air is filled with the soft, wet sound of wood being beaten into pulp. This is where the famous Samarkand paper is born, made from the inner bark of mulberry trees and the clear water of the mountain streams. A craftsman lifts a rectangular screen from a wooden vat, a thin, even layer of white fibers clinging to the mesh. He sets it out to dry in the sun, where it will eventually become a smooth, cream-colored sheet that can last for 1,000 years. The paper is cool and slightly textured, a clean surface waiting for the ink of a traveler's story or a poet's dream. As the sun begins to set, the turquoise domes of the great mosques catch the final, golden light, turning a deep and luminous emerald. The call to prayer rises over the city, a long and haunting melody that floats above the rooftops like a physical presence. The bustling market begins to slow, the vendors pulling their wooden shutters closed with a rhythmic clack-clack that signals the end of the day. The long shadows of the minarets stretch across the dusty squares, looking like dark, silent sundials marking the passage of time. The air grows cooler, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming jasmine from the hidden courtyards. We return to our caravan, which has found shelter in a grand stone-walled caravanserai near the center of the city. The high archways and tiered balconies offer a sense of safety and permanence that the desert could never provide. The camels are kneeling in the central courtyard, their rhythmic chewing, a soft and comforting sound in the deepening twilight. The merchant looks up at the stars, which are just beginning to appear above the blue-tiled skyline. He feels a deep sense of gratitude for the abundance of this place, a middle point in a journey that is far from over. The morning will bring the road again, leading us westward toward the fragrant gardens of Persia and the great sea beyond. But for tonight, we rest in the embrace of Samarkand, a city of light, color, and 1,000 whispered trades. The sounds of the market fade into a gentle, distant hum, and the scent of the tea lingers in the air. We close our eyes, the vibrant blues of the city still dancing behind our eyelids like a beautiful, silent dream. The night is warm and the city is still, guarding its treasures under the watch of the silver moon. Chapter 6. Firelight in the Caravanserai. The grand gates of Samarkand are now a distant memory, and the caravan has found refuge in a solitary stone caravanserai standing like a silent sentinel along the high road. This is a place where the walls are thick enough to swallow the howling of the desert wind and the cold of the night. The heavy iron-studded doors of the inn creak shut with a slow, echoing groan, sealing us inside a world of safety and stone. Outside, the twilight has turned the landscape into a blur of indigo and gray, but here the air is thick and warm, smelling of dry hay and the faint, sweet scent of burning cedar. The central courtyard is a hive of quiet industry as the travelers move through the deepening shadows. We watch as a servant carries a swaying lantern across the open space. The yellow light dancing over the damp paving stones and the weathered faces of the resting camels. In the center of the courtyard, a large stone basin catches the steady, rhythmic splash of a spring-fed fountain. The water is dark and clear, reflecting the first few stars that have appeared in the square of sky framed by the high rooftops. A merchant kneels by the edge, cupping the cold water in his hands and splashing his face to wash away the fine gray dust of the day's trek. The sound of the water is a constant, cooling music that anchors the busy space, a liquid heartbeat that seems to soothe the restless energy of the arriving men and animals. The camels are led to the peripheral stables, their long necks swaying as they recognize the familiar scent of dry forage. We hear the low, rhythmic grinding of their teeth as they settle into the straw, a sound that is both mechanical and comforting. A stable hand moves among them with a heavy wooden pitchfork, the dry grass rustling like paper as he fills the stone mangers. The air here is pungent and warm, filled with the smell of lanolin, leather, and the animal heat of the great beasts. One by one, the camels groan and sink to their knees, their heavy eyelids fluttering shut. Inside the main hall, a massive hearth is filled with glowing logs that hiss and pop, sending small showers of orange sparks up the soot-stained chimney. The firelight is a living thing, casting long, wavering shadows that climb the vaulted stone walls and dance across the timber rafters. We find a quiet corner and sit on a thick woven rug that feels rough and sturdy beneath our palms. The warmth from the fire reaches out like a physical embrace, slowly thawing the lingering chill from our fingers and toes. The flickering light turns the room into a sanctuary of amber, gold, and deep, restful crimson. A large copper pot hangs over the flames, its surface blackened by years of use but glowing now with the reflection of the fire. Inside, a thick stew of mutton, chickpeas, and dried apricots simmers slowly, the liquid bubbling with a soft, rhythmic sound. The steam rises in a fragrant cloud, carrying the warm, savory aroma of cumin, turmeric, and cracked black pepper. A woman stirs the pot with a long wooden spoon, her face bathed in the orange glow as she tastes the broth. The clinking of ceramic bowls being stacked nearby is a promise of the simple, honest nourishment that follows a long day. Travelers from a dozen different lands gather around the fire, their clothing a patchwork of silk, wool, and heavy felt. We see an old man with deep, weathered wrinkles that look like the dry beds of ancient rivers, his eyes fixed on the pulsing embers of the hearth. Beside him, a young boy leans forward, his chin resting in his hands as he watches the flames with quiet intensity. They do not speak the same language, but they share the same tired grace of the road. Their silhouettes against the firelight are sharp and timeless, a scene that has repeated in this stone hall for centuries. The conversation is low and melodic, a murmur of voices that blends into the crackle of the wood. A merchant from the west speaks in a soft, rhythmic cadence, his hands moving in the air as if he is weaving a story from the smoke. We cannot understand his words, but the tone of his voice is like a gentle lullaby, rising and falling with the natural breath of the room. Others nod in silent agreement, their shadows nodding with them on the stone walls. It is a moment of shared humanity, a brief crossing of paths in a world that is vast and often lonely. One man reaches into a small leather pouch and pulls out a silver coin, turning it slowly between his thumb and forefinger. The firelight catches the stamped image of a distant king, making the metal glint with a sharp, cold brilliance. He rubs the surface of the coin, feeling the raised edges of the letters and the smooth, worn center. It is a small piece of a world he has left behind, a solid weight that reminds him of where he has been. He stares at it for a long time before closing his hand and slipping it back into the darkness of his pouch. As the night deepens, the fire begins to settle into a bed of glowing coals that pulse with a soft, internal light. The bright oranges fade into deep smoldering purples and reds, and the shadows in the corners of the hall grow longer and more still. The air becomes quieter, the low murmur of talk replaced by the occasional sigh of a sleeper or the distant chime of a bell in the stables. We pull a heavy wool blanket over our shoulders, the fibers feeling thick and comforting against our skin. The stone floor beneath the rug is solid and cool, a foundation that feels as old as the mountains. Looking up, the high, vaulted ceiling is lost in the darkness, but the faint reflection of the fire catches the curve of a stone arch. The architecture is a testament to the hands that built it, block by heavy block, to provide a moment of peace for those who pass through. We feel small in the presence of such permanence, a temporary guest in a house of stone that has seen 1,000 caravans come and go. The stillness of the building seems to press down on us, a heavy and protective silence that invites the mind to rest. The final log in the hearth settles with a soft, muffled thump, sending a few last sparks dancing into the chimney. The room is now a world of soft blue shadows and the faint, sweet smell of ash and cooling stone. We close our eyes, the rhythm of the road still pulsing gently in our blood like the fading beat of a drum. Tomorrow the gates will open again, and the path will lead us toward the lush, fragrant gardens of the Persian lands. But for now, the fire is low, the stone is warm, and the night is a long, slow breath of peace. The transition from the high stone hall to the soft, perfumed air of the west will be a gentle one, moving through the starlight toward the scent of jasmine. We let the warmth of the caravanserai carry us into sleep, knowing that the road remains, waiting for the first light of the sun. The silence of the stone is our final companion tonight, a quiet guardian of the traveler's dreams. Chapter 7. The Fragrant Gardens of the West. The high, dry plateaus of the east finally descend into the heart of the Persian lands, where the air softens and turns heavy with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. After weeks of traveling through dust and stone, the arrival at a walled garden, or bog, feels like stepping into a living poem. We leave the caravan bells at the outer gate and enter a space where the world is quiet, save for the rhythmic trickling of water. The evening air is cool and still, carrying a perfume so thick and sweet it feels as though it could be touched. We move slowly through the entrance, our boots finding the familiar texture of smooth, blue-tiled paths. The garden is divided into 4 perfect quadrants, a design meant to mirror a celestial paradise on earth. A central water channel, lined with turquoise tiles that glow like fallen pieces of the sky, carries a steady stream of mountain water through the heart of the garden. The water moves with a soft, bubbling music, occasionally splashing over a series of small stone steps to create a gentle, rhythmic chime. We watch as the moonlight catches the ripples, turning the surface into a moving tapestry of silver and shadow. The sound of the water is constant and cooling, a liquid anchor that pulls the traveler's mind away from the road. Along the edges of the water channels, hundreds of night-blooming jasmine vines cling to the high mud brick walls. Their tiny, star-shaped white flowers are fully open now, releasing a fragrance that is both delicate and intoxicatingly deep. We reach out and brush a hand against the cool, dark leaves, feeling the waxy texture beneath our fingers. A single white petal falls onto the merchant's sleeve, looking like a flake of snow in the dim light. The scent clings to his clothing, a fragrant reminder of the hospitality found in this green sanctuary. Every breath here feels lighter, as if the garden is washing away the dust of the desert. Deep in the shadows of the garden, the Persian roses are in bloom, their heavy, velvet petals thick with the evening dew. These are the famous roses of Shiraz, bred for their intense aroma and their deep, blood-red color that persists even in the moonlight. We lean down to see a single blossom, its center a dark and mysterious swirl of petals that seem to hold the heat of the day. The smell is rich and spicy, a scent that has been captured in glass vials and traded across the world for centuries. A drop of water hangs from the tip of a leaf, trembling before it falls silently into the soft, dark soil. Towering above the flower beds are rows of ancient cypress trees, their dark, slender silhouettes rising toward the stars like silent guardians. Their needles are fine and soft, making a low, hushing sound as the night breeze moves through the high branches. The merchant looks up, seeing the way the trees frame the vast indigo sky, where the stars look like distant lanterns hanging in a black forest. The air near the trees is sharp and clean, smelling of resin and old wood. We walk slowly between these giants, our footsteps muffled by a carpet of dry needles that smells faintly of the earth and the sun. The garden is also home to thick groves of pomegranate and citrus trees, their branches heavy with the weight of ripening fruit. We see the round, leathery shapes of the pomegranates, their skins turning a deep, dusky purple in the shadows. One fruit has split open, revealing a cluster of glistening, ruby-like seeds that catch the pale light of the moon. Nearby, an orange tree carries the faint, zesty aroma of its peel, a bright and cheerful scent that cuts through the heavy perfume of the jasmine. The merchant touches the rough, knotty bark of an old tree, feeling the steady life pulse of the garden. In the center of the garden stands a small, open-sided pavilion, its roof supported by slender wooden columns carved with intricate floral patterns. The floor is covered in a single, massive carpet of deep blue and gold, its wool so soft and thick that it swallows the sound of our movement. We sit on a low silk cushion, feeling the coolness of the night air move freely through the open archways. A small oil lamp sits on a low cedar table, its flame a steady, golden point that illuminates the fine details of the carvings. The silence here is profound, a heavy and peaceful stillness that invites the soul to linger. A servant moves quietly through the shadows, carrying a thin-necked glass carafe filled with a chilled sharbat made of rosewater and lime. He pours the liquid into a small, etched glass cup, the sound of the pouring liquid a bright and musical splash in the quiet room. We take the cup, feeling the condensation on the glass, cool our palms before we take a slow, refreshing sip. The drink is sweet, floral, and sharp, a liquid reflection of the garden itself that leaves a lingering coolness on the tongue. We watch the small bubbles rise and vanish, lost in the simple pleasure of the moment. Beyond the pavilion, a large rectangular pool of still water reflects the entire architecture of the garden and the stars above. The surface is so calm it looks like a sheet of dark obsidian, broken only when a small leaf drifts down and creates a series of perfect, expanding circles. The merchant watches his own reflection in the pool, a dark and blurred shape that seems to belong to another world. He thinks of the miles he has traveled and the miles that remain. But here, the water tells him to stay still. The reflection of a bright planet hangs in the center of the pool, a steady light in the deep. The night deepens, and the scent of the garden seems to grow even more intense, as if the earth is exhaling all the sweetness it gathered during the day. We hear the distant, lonely call of a nightingale from the high cypress branches, a series of clear melodic notes that pierce the silence and then fade away. The bird song is a classic sound of the Persian night, a lonely and beautiful music that has inspired poets for generations. It is a song of longing and peace, a sound that belongs to the moon and the shadows. We listen until the silence returns, even deeper than before. The merchant reaches into his pack and pulls out a small, dried pomegranate flower he picked up at the start of the garden walk. He holds it in his palm, the petals brittle and orange, representing a journey that has moved from the wild steppes to this refined paradise. He knows that the road will soon turn toward the coast, where the air will change again, smelling of salt and the great open sea. But for tonight, he is content to remain within these walls where the water flows and the jasmine blooms. The garden is a fortress of beauty against the vast and indifferent wilderness outside. As we prepare to rest, the lamp in the pavilion is turned low, leaving the world to the moonlight and the stars. The blue tiles of the path are now a pale, luminous gray, leading back toward the sleeping quarters of the inner court. We walk one last time past the roses, their scent a final, fragrant blessing on the evening. The sound of the water follows us, a gentle, rhythmic lullaby that promises a dreamless sleep. The Persian night is warm and kind, a soft embrace that holds the traveler close before the dawn. The starlight is our blanket, and the garden is our home. Chapter 8. The Golden Shores of the Great Sea. The fragrant roses and cypress trees of the Persian gardens have faded into the dust of the Anatolian plateau, and now the air begins to change once more. It carries a new weight, a cool and humid breath that smells of brine, ancient salt, and the vast open secrets of the deep. After thousands of miles of dry earth, the merchant stops his horse on a high, grassy ridge, looking toward the horizon where the land simply ends. There, stretching out in a shimmering expanse of liquid sapphire, is the Great Sea. The sight is a shock to eyes used to the brown and ochre of the desert, a blue so deep and vibrant it seems to vibrate against the pale sky. We descend toward the coast as the late afternoon sun begins its slow, heavy fall. The path here is no longer made of shifting sand or jagged mountain shale, but of ancient Roman stones, worn smooth and rounded by centuries of cartwheels and footsteps. Each step produces a soft, rhythmic thud that feels solid and final, a structural echo of the great civilizations that meet at this edge of the world. The merchant feels the moisture in the air settle on his skin, a fine mist that carries the tang of seaweed and the distant, sharp cry of gulls. The road is narrowing, funneled toward the greatest crossroads of the West, Constantinople. Before us rise the Theodosian walls, a massive and terrifyingly beautiful spine of stone and brick that has guarded the city for 1,000 years. The walls are immense, tiered in layers that catch the golden light, looking like a mountain range built by human hands. We see the deep red of the Roman bricks alternating with the gray of the limestone blocks, a pattern that has survived earthquakes and sieges alike. High above, a sentinel paces slowly along the battlements, his bronze helmet catching a single brilliant spark of the dying sun. The sheer scale of the defense is humbling, a stone promise that the journey has reached its sanctuary. We pass through the Golden Gate, the most magnificent entrance to the city, where the archway is so high it seems to hold the sky itself. The shadow inside the tunnel is cool and smells of damp moss and old iron, a stark contrast to the brilliant warmth of the world outside. As the caravan emerges into the city, the sound of the road is replaced by the roar of the capital. It is a symphony of stone, the clatter of iron-rimmed wheels, the rhythmic chanting from a distant monastery, and the melodic shouting of harbor workers. The merchant pulls his lead camel closer, his eyes wide at the marble-paved streets that shine like mirrors. The Mizi, the great middle way of the city, stretches out before us, lined with tall columns and grand porticos that offer a shaded path through the heart of the capital. Here, the treasures of the Silk Road meet the goods of the north and west. We pass stalls draped in heavy furs from the Russian forests, jars of thick honey from the Danube, and amphorae of dark wine from the Aegean Isles. The air is a thick, dizzying swirl of scents, the pungency of drying fish from the harbor, the sweet smoke of frankincense from a nearby church, and the sharp, clean smell of the sea breeze. Turning a corner, the merchant finds himself at the edge of the Golden Horn, the great natural harbor that cradles the city's wealth. Hundreds of ships are anchored in the dark, chopping water, slender dromons with their lateen sails furled, and heavy, round-bellied merchant cogs from Venice and Genoa. The sound of the water lapping against the wooden hulls is a constant, rhythmic slap-slap that speaks of endless movement. We watch a crane made of thick timber hoist a heavy crate from a ship's hold, the hemp ropes creaking under the strain. This is the terminus, the place where the silk finally leaves the land and takes to the waves. Above the harbor rises the immense golden dome of the Hagia Sophia, a structure so vast it seems to float on a sea of light. In the evening glow, the dome's gold-leafed surface becomes a second sun, radiating a soft, celestial warmth over the surrounding rooftops. We watch as the light catches the hundreds of small windows at the base of the dome, making it look like a crown of flickering candles. The merchant pauses, his hand resting on a cool marble pillar, feeling the immense weight of history and faith that holds the building aloft. It is a visual anchor for the weary, a landmark that says the long road is done. The sun is now a deep, burning orange, hanging just above the Bosphorus, the narrow strait that separates the east from the west. The water is a sheet of molten gold, rippling with every passing boat and every gust of wind. The merchant walks down to the water's edge, his boots crunching on a small patch of pebbled shore. He reaches down and dips his hand into the sea, feeling the shocking cold and the slick, salt-heavy texture of the Mediterranean. This water connects him to Rome, to Alexandria, and to the unknown lands of the setting sun. He is at the very lip of the world. Near a small stone pier, a group of sailors is sitting around a low wooden table, sharing a meal of olives, salt-crusted bread, and small silver fish grilled over charcoal. The smell of the smoke is thin and salty, mixing with the aroma of the rough, resinous wine they pour from a clay jug. One of the sailors is mending a net, his fingers moving with a rhythmic, hypnotic speed as he ties the knots. They do not look at the merchant, but their presence is a comfort, a reminder that life at the end of the road is just as busy and beautiful as life at the start. The merchant finds a quiet spot on a stone bench, overlooking the strait, watching the shadows of the city grow long and soft. The intense bustle of the day is beginning to fade, replaced by a gentle, maritime peace. The calls of the gulls have quieted, and the only sound is the rhythmic creak of the masts in the harbor and the distant chime of a vesper bell. He feels the exhaustion of the 3,000-mile journey finally settle into his bones, a heavy but satisfied weight. He has crossed the sands, the mountains, and the plains to stand here, where the silk will begin its next life. As the last sliver of the sun vanishes, the sky turns a deep velvety plum, and the first lanterns are lit along the harbor walls. Their reflections dance on the water like tiny golden snakes, flickering with every wave. The merchant looks back toward the east, where the land disappears into the darkness. Somewhere back there is the gate of Chang'an, the singing sands, and the silent caves of the Buddhas. Those worlds are now memories, locked in the silk he has carried. He takes a deep breath of the salty night air, his eyes following the steady, rhythmic pulse of a distant lighthouse beam. He rises slowly, his movements stiff but purposeful, and begins the walk toward the small inn where his caravan is resting. The stone beneath his feet is solid, a foundation that bridges the world of the road and the world of the sea. He knows that the journey of the silk is over, and his own rest is near. The golden shores of the great sea have welcomed him, and the night is quiet, smelling of salt and the promise of home. We walk with him through the narrowing streets, the light of the moon guiding us through the final, peaceful steps of the way. Chapter 9. The Unrolling of the Silk. The great ships of the Bosphorus have long since sailed, and the golden walls of the capital are now many months behind us. In a quiet, stone-walled chamber far to the west, the journey of thousands of miles finally comes to its silent and beautiful conclusion. The salt air of the coast has been replaced by the still, cool atmosphere of a private library, where the only movement is the slow dance of dust motes in a single beam of afternoon light. We move from the frantic energy of the world's crossroads into this intimate, hushed space, where the heavy oak door closes with a soft, solid thump. Here, the long road is no longer a path of dust and stone, but a memory held within the walls of a heavy, iron-bound chest sitting upon a dark wooden table. The chest itself is a relic of the journey, its cedar surface scarred by the ropes of camel packs and weathered by the sun of a dozen different climates. It carries the faint, lingering scent of the desert, a dry, resinous aroma that clings to the grain of the wood. A woman moves toward the table, her footsteps silent on the thick wool rug. She reaches out, her fingers tracing the cold, rusted surface of the heavy iron latch. There is a moment of profound stillness before the metal gives way with a sharp, rhythmic click that echoes against the high, vaulted ceiling. The silence that follows is heavy with anticipation. As she lifts the lid, the hinges groan with a slow, low pitch, a sound that seems to carry the weight of the many miles traveled. Inside, the treasure is wrapped in layers of protective oilcloth, dark and stiff from the journey's many seasons. She carefully pulls back the first layer, the fabric making a dry, crinkling sound, like the rustle of autumn leaves in a quiet courtyard. Beneath the outer shell, the innermost wrapping is made of soft, white cotton, still smelling faintly of the sandalwood that was packed between the folds to ward off the damp. Her movements are slow, reverent, and deliberate. Then the silk is revealed. It rests in the center of the chest like a pool of captured moonlight, a deep and luminous blue that seems to hold its own internal glow. The merchant's hand reaches into the box, his calloused fingers contrasting sharply with the delicate, liquid texture of the fabric. It is cold to the touch, a smooth and sliding sensation that feels more like water than thread. He lifts the first fold and the fabric spills over his arm in a heavy, graceful cascade, making a soft, rhythmic hushing sound as it settles against his sleeve. It is a tactile miracle of the East. He carries the bolt of silk toward the window, where the low sun is beginning to paint the room in shades of amber and rose. As the light hits the fabric, the surface comes alive with a shimmering, iridescent luster that shifts from a midnight indigo to a bright, electric azure. The weave is so fine it is almost invisible, creating a surface that reflects the light with a soft, diffused glow. He runs his thumb across the edge, feeling the incredible strength hidden within the fragile threads. It is a material born of fire and patience, carried through the heart of the world. The woman joins him, her hands moving to help unfurl the length of the silk across the dark surface of the oak table. As it rolls out, the fabric makes a series of soft, musical flaps, like the sound of a bird's wings in a distant garden. The blue silk covers the dark wood entirely, looking like a river of lapis lazuli flowing through the center of the room. They stand in silence for a moment, watching the way the light dances in the folds, creating valleys of deep shadow and ridges of brilliant, shimmering gold. The room is filled with a quiet, breathtaking elegance. Embedded within the weave are tiny, intricate patterns that are only visible when the light hits them at a certain angle. These are the whispers of the Silk Road, geometric stars from Persia, floral vines from the Middle Kingdom, and abstract waves from the Great Sea. The merchant leans in close, his eyes tracing the path of a single golden thread that runs through the blue. It is a physical map of the cultures that touched this fabric during its long journey. Every inch of the silk is a testament to the hands that spun, dyed, and wove it in small, sunlit workshops half a world away. As the sun begins to set, the merchant lights a single tallow candle on the table. The small flame flickers in the draught from the window, casting a warm, orange glow over the blue fabric. The silk responds to the firelight, its color deepening and becoming more mysterious, like the water of a mountain lake at twilight. The shadows of the two people are cast long and still against the stone walls, their silhouettes merging with the darkness of the room. The air is cool, carrying the faint, earthy scent of the cooling hearth and the sweet, lingering perfume of the sandalwood. The woman takes up a pair of heavy, polished iron scissors, the metal cool and heavy in her palm. She pauses before the first cut, the blades resting gently against the edge of the silk. The sound of the metal against the fabric is a soft, rhythmic snip, a clean and final sound that marks the transition from treasure to garment. Each cut is careful and precise, honoring the thousands of miles the silk has traveled to reach this table. The scraps of fabric fall to the floor like blue petals, resting quietly on the dark rug as the night deepens outside. Outside the window, the distant sounds of the city begin to fade into a gentle, nightly hum. The clatter of carts has stopped, and the only sound is the rhythmic chiming of a church bell marking the hour. The world is settling into a deep, restful sleep, but inside the room, the work continues in a slow and peaceful rhythm. A needle pulls a silken thread through the fabric with a soft, swishing sound, a repetitive and hypnotic motion that keeps time with the breathing of the two people. The silk is being transformed, taking on a new shape for a new world. The candle burns lower, its flame a small and steady point of light in the vast, darkening chamber. The merchant looks one last time at the blue fabric before he turns to leave, his heart full of the quiet satisfaction of a journey completed. He thinks of the desert stars, the mountain snow, and the golden gates, all of which led to this single, quiet moment. The silk remains on the table, a shimmering bridge between the distant east and the silent west. The room is now a sanctuary of peace, guarded by the thick stone walls and the deepening night. We leave them there, in the soft glow of the candle and the scent of the sandalwood. The story of the road has reached its final resting place, settling into the quiet corners of this room like a slow and gentle breath. The world outside is dark and still, and the long journey has finally come to an end. We step back from the window, watching as the light in the chamber is extinguished, leaving only the memory of the blue silk and the starlight. Thank you for joining me on this long and quiet journey through the echoes of history. If you found peace in the whispers of the Silk Road tonight, I invite you to gently like this video and subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the past. Let me know in the comments where your thoughts traveled tonight, and perhaps share a small detail that stayed with you. For now, let the rhythm of the road carry you into a deep and restful sleep. The candle has burned low, the door is closed, and the world is at peace. Good night, traveler. Good night.